Yeah, you read the title right. I don't think that the Lord of the Rings books would, in the current day and age, that they would get published anymore. Which is very, very sad. I've recently started the trilogy, or the book trilogy, I'll say, and as I've been reading it mostly on the train on my way to work, I've noticed that the first couple of chapters especially, they would not be accepted by an agent in today's publishing world. For today's standards, you have to be fast, you have to be cool, there's mystery, there needs to be a whole kind of there almost needs to be like a mini story happening in your first chapters, which is frankly just not happening in the Lord of the Rings. And that's why I think that it wouldn't get through today. That's actually the really simple conclusion that I made for this video. But if you want to hear more, please feel free to stick around. Welcome back to another episode of me just yapping without a script. Today I will be talking about the publishing world, and especially for books, as I myself have written a book and I am currently writing one, and it has been published by some local publisher. But today I wanted to focus more on specifically Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship of the Ring, of course. I don't think it would get published, no, and that is not because it's the book's fault or Tolkien's fault. Obviously, I'm not here to critique the magnum opus of fantasy. Obviously, it's not the book's fault that it doesn't get published today. I think it's more the environment in which it's trying to be published right now. For example, Dune. I also think Dune wouldn't get published today in today's standard of book publishing. And my strongest piece of evidence for those two very odd claims are that I recently visited a bookstore, like a very big one. And what was there on their fantasy shelves? Fourth Wing. What was the other one? A Throne of Glass, I think. Yeah, books that are kind of more aimed to, how do I say this in a kid-friendly or family-friendly way? But you know what happens in those books, right? They're just smut books, and I've tried to read one at some point, but I just can't. But yeah, I think that's what the problem is with the current sort of environment, that you need to have everything happening in your first chapter. A very good example of this and how you can still make a good book with this type of philosophy is the Red Rising series. I think his first chapter is just so jam-packed of things that it's actually one of my least favorite chapters of the whole book. I like it when he takes his time a little bit more. And I tried to follow this in my book, but I overextended it a little bit. I just did too much the whole book. But yeah, for Red Rising specifically, the beginning is very or very packed with things, and very it really pulls you in, which is good, which is what I like. It pulled me in as well. I'm not blaming the book for it, but it's clearly written for a modern sort of audience and a modern sort of publishing world. And that's the big difference with the Lord of the Rings, as the first chapter just talks about Bilbo planning his little birthday party, and where Frodo gets anxious about it, and then Gandalf shows up, and they actually just have fun. There's not a whole lot of things happening except for that one activity, where there's a lot of world building and a lot of info dumping throughout. And I don't think that a modern agent would give it the light of day to read in my version at least, a almost 50-page chapter 1, which, like I said, it's not what modern day agents are looking for, but I think it's what we as fantasy enjoyers really want. I want a slow-looking story about a lone Bilbo trying to make a birthday party work. You know what I mean? And I'm now at the almost end of the first book, and I'm surprised with how slow it went. And I love that it went so slow. I don't think I can critique Tolkien in any way. I don't intend to. I'm not going to claim that I'm any way, shape, or form better than this author. I think he's amazing, especially with how he still holds up in this modern era. But, and that's a big one, I don't think that the book would get through, and that it's really sad. I think it's really sad that it wouldn't go through, just like Dune. I haven't read Dune yet, but I think it wouldn't, like what I've seen online, I think people say that it wouldn't get through today, which is sad, you know? How can these two giants who have shaped the two respective genres, how can they not be published today while they've shaped the world today? You know what I mean? I think it's just a little weird how you just see a lot of the same type of books today. Like I go to the bookstore and just see young adult smut books everywhere, and like George R.R. Martin or even Brandon Sanderson, Tolkien. I forgot the name right now, but the guy who wrote the Wheel of Time. My apologies. They're all like pushed to the back, and they have their own little section, but it's clearly overpowered by all the rest. Well, I know, like, we need to move on as a society, and we need to, like, read new things, and we need to not always get hung up on, for example, Tolkien. He has had his fame, I get it, I get that argument, but still, like, why aren't there new Tolkiens? Why aren't there new, you know, why aren't there new Martins, like, young people who write these sort of things and get successful doing it? There is, I suppose, Brandon Sanderson. You can make an argument that he's more aligned to the modern sort of Tolkien. He revolutionized fantasy, of course, with the way he's doing it, and the kind of like MCU type of book series, which is nice. You know, I'm a fan of like big worlds and big mysteries and exploration and all those types of things. Like, I'm not going to say that I haven't deep dived into Lord of the Rings like it's supposed to be as well. I don't know how Tolkien would have thought about like people exploring his grander world that hasn't been published. I don't know what he would think about it, but I love it. So I'm going to keep doing it. But for Brandon Sanderson, his books are also like, I saw maybe 5 books of his, and well, 4 of them being part 1 and part 2 of certain books, which is just odd to me, because yeah, you don't see this type of fantasy anymore, or like get really big. When I go to like the top in my home country, I just see these sort of weird books about a romance between an alpha werewolf and a sexy vampire. I mean, I just wanna see my guys with swords. You know what I mean? And it's very odd to see that in this modern sort of publishing, that the first chapter especially, and the chapters beyond, needs to be so exciting and so, you almost have to feed the reader like every piece of information, make sure that they're not confused at any point, which is stupid. I love to write like mysteries into my stories, and if you've checked out my book, or if you're planning to, beware, you're not going to get everything at all. It's intended to be a almost 6-book story, and I intend to have like a sort of avalanche at the far end of it where everything just suddenly makes sense. So if you want to check it out, I'd be very thankful. First of all, let me know if you do. And yeah, that's I think my little rant for today is just that the current environment of book publishing, especially, just it's not good. It's so demanding of like your first chapter needs to be that and that and that, and it locks you in my opinion. I'm still learning to write better, of course. I'm still learning to get there. But in my experience, what I've read so far, of what I've read from beginning writers, all the first chapters can kind of feel the same, where it starts with intriguing action, goes to a little mystery, and then we get an answer to the mystery already. And then the second chapter almost abandons what we did before, because it needs to be cool and needs to draw you in, but then the actual story starts. You know what I mean? Like, I want my story to start at page 1. I don't want it to wait until page 10, where you have now gotten the approval of an agent or of a publishing company, and now the reader version starts. You know what I mean? And just in general, I don't think that the smut current era is something for me. I suppose I could get behind people reading it. It's your own thing, you know? No judgment there. For me, just not my thing. And it's kind of sad that I just walk into a bookstore and that's the majority of what I see. Is just, I have to like almost pick my way through the smut books before I get to my type of book. It should be at least like, you know, equal, that I just can abandon that I just go to the fantasy section and I just pick up a fantasy book and I have a 50-50 chance of it being a smut book. You know, not 20/80 like it's today. But yeah, that was my little rant about the current book publishing world. I hope I haven't offended anyone with my Lord of the Rings take. But like I said, I loved the first book. I am going to go right into the second one. This is not a commentary on Tolkien at all. It's a commentary on the broader publishing world. Thank you very much for listening and for watching my undoubtedly pro gameplay in the back. And yeah, have a good one and have a good day or night, depending on where you are. Thank you.